My name is David Maisel. I'm one of the partners at a law firm known as DMC Law. We are a boutique law firm that just works for dentists. And it's not just that we work for dentists, we do your commercial work and your corporate work. And one of the most important things for dentists for their corporate work is the concept of incorporating a professional corporation. So I'm going to speak with you guys very quickly for a few minutes just on some of the major topics of incorporating, and then you'll hear more throughout the night from the other guest speakers we have today. So I'm going to start off with the very first question. You're here to understand or to learn about incorporating. Why? Is there a benefit to incorporating? Well, if you haven't seen the slide already, the answer is yes. There's definitely a benefit to incorporating. The first benefit, does anyone know what the first benefit to incorporating is?
Small business tax rate?
Correct. Right up there on the slide. There's a small business tax rate, which you'll hear a little bit more from the accountant who's here to speak this evening, Atul Mehra. The second thing that's a great benefit of incorporating is you can actually get away with not paying federal tax up to a certain amount of money. And that's done completely legally and on site, so you don't have to worry about doing any funny business. Another benefit of incorporating is you get to actually income split with family members, either through dividends or through salary if appropriate. And another great benefit to incorporating is to take advantage of the lifetime capital gains exemption, which is a way that you can save thousands upon thousands of dollars in taxes when you go to sell your business down the road. So moving forward, the next question is, okay, we know that professional corporations are benefits. The question is then, how do we set up these professional corporations? So for those of you unfamiliar with the process, it goes like this. First, you're going to prepare and submit articles of incorporation, which you'll do through your lawyers in consult with your accountants. So after you draft and prepare the articles of incorporation and you receive back the certificate of incorporation and the issued articles from the applicable government agency, next you'll need a minute book. The minute book is almost like the brains or nervous system of your company. It's where you keep track of the shareholder minutes, the director minutes, the share certificates, the bylaws, and things of that nature. So that comes as part of the setup of the professional corporation. After that, once you have your professional corporation, your college, the RCDSO, wants you to apply for a certificate of authorization. So your ability to practice dentistry through a professional corporation is sanctioned by your college, but you have to apply first for the certificate. So it's an exercise of filling out a few forms, notarizing the articles, submitting a certificate of status, and a few other things, as well as paying a fee to the college. Then after that, if you have been practicing for a while, maybe you have your own practice, and you've got assets that are in your own name that you own, your accountant may advise you to do something known as a rollover, where you'll take personal assets and you'll roll them over into your professional corporation. And that goes as part of the tax planning strategy that you'll work through with your accountants. So, not horrible. It is a process to set it up, but it can be done in time. So after now you've figured out that it's good to incorporate, you've now set up your professional corporation, what comes next? The next step is you want to maintain your professional corporation. That includes things such as directors' resolutions, shareholder resolutions. You may be, through talking with your accountant, you may be told it's a good time to declare a dividend and take money from your professional corporation through a dividend as opposed to salary. As well, with maintaining your corporation, you have to file annual returns. Your college wants you to renew your professional incorporation's certificate of authorization every year. So every year during the summer, you'll apply for a renewal through the college. And lastly, you can never forget about your corporate income tax returns. So again, not a daunting task, but a couple of things you have to keep in mind. So now we know why we're doing it. We know the benefits of doing it and how we're going to do it. Next, we're going to look at, and we understand how to maintain it, next we're going to look at some common problems with professional corporations, because you want to make sure that you stay on side and don't get yourself in trouble while using them. So first, you want to make sure that you have an adequate share structure. So you want to make sure through talking with your lawyer and your accountant and look at what your family dynamics are, because certain family members can be members of your shareholders of your professional corporation. And through that, you can even achieve better tax savings and better tax planning by the inclusion of your family members. So for example, you could add a child as a shareholder, or a parent, or a spouse. But you want to be very careful that when you give these shares, or you set up your share class structure, you set it up in a way that, number one, it complies with government legislation, and number two, that it complies with the college's rules, with the RCDSO's rules. So you want to make sure that you speak with your lawyer to have the proper share class structure. Secondly, you don't want to give the wrong shares to your family. So just by a show of hands, who thinks you should give kids keys to cars? Who thinks you should give keys, access to your bank accounts? And when I say kids, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7-year-olds, even teenagers. You have to be careful not to give kids things that they shouldn't have until a later point in time. So one of the things you'll learn from your lawyer or your accountant is that you're not going to want to give certain things to minor children under the age of 18. So you want to also make sure that you give the right type of shares to family members. So for example, do you want your child to be the boss of your dental practice? By a show of hands, who wants their children to be a boss of their dental practice? So that's nobody. Good decision. So you're not going to want to give, for example, voting shareholders to children, voting shares to children. But also you got to be careful that you stay on side with the RCDSO's rules. Also, another problem is once you have a professional corporation, you may start giving family members salary. If it's unreasonable in the eyes of the tax authority, in the eyes of CRA, you could get yourself in trouble. So you want to be careful of that as well. And lastly, declaring dividends to your minor children. I know you'll hear from the accountant this evening that if you do give dividends to minor children, they can be taxed at the highest rates. So you want to be careful about making sure you give dividends to the right people and not necessarily minor children. And lastly, once you have a professional corporation, there's a few other things you should keep in mind. Number one, there's further, I'll call them tax savings, but there's further financial savings down the road by having dual wills. Secondly, you want to make sure you have powers of attorney, because if you can't handle your professional corporation due to an incapacity, you want to make sure you've got it set up that there's someone else that can step in to look after your affairs. And lastly, there's further financial savings and tax savings if you can have an employment contract with death benefits between you and your own professional corporation. So I've gone through this pretty quick. I've tried to hit on just the big topics because there's other people who have to speak tonight. But hopefully just through this initial introduction, you can see that as far as a professional corporation goes, it's not a scary proposition. It's a good business decision to make. And in terms of setting it up, in terms of the benefits, maintaining it, tips and traps, things to avoid, and also the other things that can go along with it to multiply and help save you even more with your financial planning. It's actually a very good vehicle for you and your practice.